Hi, everyone. Welcome to our biannual eDiscovery for the Paralegal Advantage webinar series. I am just waiting for a few more to join us. I want to give everyone a few minutes before we get going. For anyone who is new, I think we have a lot of new attendees today. I know I have some attendees that have attended before, but we'll just kind of go slowly through. I'm going to start with our kind of high-level discussion that we like to start these off with about eDiscovery in general. And that is great for those of you who are brand new to the transition to the eDiscovery element of your legal career. And, you know, obviously we've all started, or I would say most of us started our legal career before eDiscovery was the thing that it is now in our daily work life. So we'll start with the eDRM. That's the electronic discovery model and a reference model. And then I'll get into the platform, and I want to talk about very LexB specific stuff. Just going to check real quick to see if we've got more of our attendees here. We've got one more out of quite a bit, so we'll just give everyone a few more minutes. I may repeat myself at about 5 minutes past, but for those of you who are on now, feel free to chat me questions. You know, this is a little more formal than our weekly webinar series in that I am not answering questions you've already submitted, and I have a slideshow to start off with, but it's still, you know, informal enough that I welcome questions, especially when I'm talking about the first portion. If any of this doesn't make sense, or if you want some additional resources, let me know, and I will make sure that I take down your usernames, and I'll email you some additional resources after the webinar. So this is just a little bit about our webinar series, how you can sign up, who you can email if you have issues or questions, and how you can stream. You can live stream, or not live stream, but you can stream on demand the webinars that have happened previously. And there's one that I'm going to mention at the beginning of my discussion that I encourage everyone who hasn't watched the interview of the custodians and mapping the data sources. It's worth a listen if you are bringing in any new cases where you have a lot of custodians to deal with. If you're dealing with multiple people who are members of an organization, HR department, IT department, that one will be helpful for you as well. And you can find that from this link, the webinar series. So I guess I'm going to go ahead and get started, and whoever is joining us late can follow up with me if they miss out on anything. This again is just a little bit about LexB, where we're based out of. As most of you know, we're based out of Austin, Texas, but we are, in my department, professional services. We're all over the country. So I happen to be one of your West Coast professional services members, but you have, I'm sure, dealt with some of us across the different time zones. And I find that pretty helpful for those who work early, who work late. This is just a little bit about me. I'm sure that those of you who have joined me before know all this, so I won't spend too much time on it. But I, as most of you, have worked as a litigation paralegal. I did it for over 15 years, working for both sides of the fence and in a variety of areas. As I was leaving the litigation, the paralegal litigation world, I was dabbling in eDiscovery, and that brought me and my interest to LexB. So I do completely understand what the deadlines mean, what you need to do with this electronic data, and how that translates from what we did before eDiscovery, when everything was in hard copy, and then that transition from hard copy to getting a little more technically savvy and scanning things and creating editable PDFs and basing our own documents, not with the old, sticker method. So I think I do have a lot of insight into how LexB works for you. So I enjoy hosting this webinar for everyone. And then here's our agenda. So we'll cover, as I said, just the procedural overview, the high level, what eDiscovery means in the world of, and what we're used to, and how we're used to handling the intake of our cases and our case management workflow. As I discussed, I want to spend a little bit less time than I typically do on the EDRM. I feel like I probably exhaustively discuss it. And there are multiple resources that I will cite for you. And I think there's just more that we can talk about, a few things that have changed, some software updates that we've had, a revision to our ESI sample order. And then again, I want to point out some of those other webinars that I think will be helpful. And the rest of this agenda is how I'll go through the flow once we hop over to the platform. So I always love to talk about uploads and pre-upload organization. That really ties into that data mapping with your custodians. And just so that you understand what you're getting, because I know it's frustrating when you get something from an opposing counsel, you go through the steps of sending it to me, and then I say, a few hours later or later that afternoon, this is not what you need. You have A and you need A, B, C, and D. Or, okay, I can upload this for you. However, you'll be limited in these ways because of how it was presented to you. And so, you've now lost a day, whereas if we discuss it now and I give you some insight into what you want things to be and look like, before you even receive it from one of those opposing parties, then you can immediately take a peek and say, I'm missing load files, or this is not pursuant to our ESI agreement. And then we'll talk about just, a quick little QC steps on upload. I always want to make sure that my DIY uploaders know these things, because sometimes you're so savvy that you may not set up that initial training right away. You may start uploading, and then, you may run into a few little snafus your first couple times uploading that, if we had talked about it or had a chance to go over it ahead of time, would have saved you a little bit of headache. And then, of course, review and productions, because that is the meat and potatoes of eDiscovery platforms like LexB. But then I always want to make sure that everyone is aware of all of these additional tools. So we'll wrap up with running searches, making sure that you're getting the most out of your search abilities. Talking about searching and filtering is something that I've been recently encountering a lot of questions and answering them. And then how this tool, LexB, is your, it's kind of your assistant, how you make it work for you to streamline preparing your attorneys for hearings, depositions, and even trial. I'm just going to take a peek and see if we've got, okay. And please, again, don't hesitate to ask questions. I'm going to undock my, okay. Apologize for that. So I will, I'll back up one slide just so that you see what I was talking about. Here is our agenda, but pretty much easy to follow. And then we'll just hop back into the EDRM model. So you'll see at the bottom where we have pulled this resource from. And again, high level, let's just talk about what eDiscovery, the workflow, and the processes are, and the purpose for those. So I'm going to cover the different stages starting from left to right, and we'll talk about the fact that this will loop over on itself multiple times depending on how your case goes. If additional people join, if you discover additional custodians and data sources, halfway through discovery, which is the heartburn and bane of everyone's existence, but it happens. So I will start from the left, and we'll go through the chart, but know that you may sometimes land right in the middle because you've taken a case over, and now you're dealing with what they've done and what they have presented to you. But in an ideal eDiscovery case, you're going to begin with the information government stage. And this may speak a little bit more to in-house counsel or counsel who have more control from the very beginning. And, that is not a luxury that every counsel has. You sometimes are trying to go back and recreate the information, history or timeline. But when you are able to get into the conversation with your clients from the very beginning, this is a good place to begin our conversation. So this is really about you communicating with your client and notifying the custodians. That's your litigation hold, essentially. Your notice of, to the custodians, to the IT department, stop archiving, emails, or if if there are backup tapes involved, if there is some kind of archive process that's automatic, this is when you begin those conversations about this is your responsibility, these are the steps you must take. And it's really at that point making sure that everyone at the table understands their obligation to preserve the data and how they need to provide it to you, getting that electronic household in order. And that is because you need to mitigate the risk and expenses that the eDiscovery case could present. Sometimes there is just a complete nightmare of trying to identify data that has been inadvertently sometimes lost, or again, archived or written over or deleted automatically. So the initial creation of your electronically stored information through its final disposition now becomes your responsibility as much as it is your client. So once you have that step or have wrapped your arms around that, now you're identifying. So we're moving on to the next phase, which is the identification phase. You're locating the sources of ESI. And so this is where I think some of you may benefit from our other webinar about data mapping and custodian interviews. It just kind of gives you a little bit of framework. It's nothing that you probably wouldn't come up with on your own, but sometimes it's nice to just have, an example, a template, a list to go by, and then you can modify that to your workflow. But you're identifying those sources of ESI. You're determining also the scope of it. How many different custodians are there? Is it one? Are there 50? Where are all of the email accounts backed up? Is it a cloud? Is it server-based? Do they have an IT person who knows how to collect, PSPs for you? Or are you going to figure it out? Are you going to have Lexby do it for you? Or are you going to hire another vendor? Again, it's not just email. It's the emails, the hard drives, the work phones, the personal phones. Now it's turning into integrated messaging, communicating via Slack or GChat. Those are so many more sources of evidence, essentially, that more than we're used to. Once you have identified it, and you've identified what your client essentially is in possession of and what you need to figure out how to deal with. Now it's time to move to the preservation. Preservation and collection are kind of happening together, but preservation needs to be addressed as you are collecting. Everyone, this kind of goes back to that information governance bubble. Everyone at the table needs to understand how to protect against the inappropriate alteration or destruction of data, because that will be such a headache for everyone 6 months down the road when you all of a sudden discover someone has produced something that your client sent, but you don't have it. So it's important to address preservation at this phase when you begin collection. Collection would be just the gathering of that ESI. So for anyone who is not familiar with or hasn't had to do collections before, I mentioned integrated messaging. How do you collect from someone's like Slack or GChat account? They could be using that on a variety of devices. So we partner with some forensic data collection and examiners. You're always welcome to use your own. It really depends on where you're located in the country. Ours happens to be in Austin because that's where our main office is based out of. But that collection is requiring someone to give up their device for a certain period of hours or days. Then email collection can be done remotely. So if you have a client who doesn't have an IT person available to do the collection for them, and you certainly don't want to have to do it, if you want to engage Lexby to do it, just know it's a very quick and easy and painless process usually, as long as that custodian is just aware that, okay, this afternoon, Angela or one of her co-workers will be accessing your email account with the username and password that you shared with them. There would be an authentication code coming your way. All they have to do is send that to us, and literally within an hour, we're done and we're out of their hair. So collection can be easy. Sometimes it can be more laborious than that, especially if you are considering doing searches or date range parameters ahead of time, within the email account or the integrated messaging accounts. And at that point, we would refer you on to a vendor or suggest that you find a vendor of your own, but just so you're all aware of the different types of collection. And then imaging someone's laptop or hard drive, that's another form of collection. So instead of having someone bring that banker's box in, this is the new way that you're collecting data from your clients. There are cloud-based file sharing sites. There are, some companies are still working on a local network. Some clients may still literally just be saving things to their desktop. So it's just knowing where it's all coming from. Again, I'll probably sound like I'm repeating myself, but that data mapping really helps when you have a lot of different ESI sources. So preservation and collection we've covered. Now we're moving into when you engage us, if you haven't already, for the collection stage. Processing comes first. You've collected, you send it to Lexby, and that's when we get involved and start looking at what you have, kind of notifying you of, okay, well, so we have this PST or this many gigabytes, or, now we'll start processing and let you know when it's available for review. Then we notify you if we've done the upload. Here are your upload batches. This is your total doc count. You have this many placeholders. But for those of you who do your own upload, I want to make sure that you're aware of the processing steps. So if you do that, if you are the DIY uploader, I will, once we switch into the Lexby platform, I'll make sure that I show you how you can do some quick QC. I don't want to spend a ton of time on it because I feel like more and more, a lot of you are sending us the data to upload, but just for those of you who are still, and sometimes even if you have a subscription account, you have something that's just tiny and you just want to get it in. For those of you as well, I just want to make sure that you are aware of what processing steps mean. Once the data has processed and we release it to you, or you've done your QC and you're ready to review, that will then be the step of evaluating the ESI. Now you're looking at it. Now you've collected it, it's processed, and now you have to evaluate it for relevance and privilege. Review goes hand in hand with the analysis. If you're not just reviewing it for whether or not you're going to produce it or assert a privilege on it, but the content and context of it, patterns, topics, people, discussions being had among the parties. This is where some of our other tools will really come in handy. Not every eDiscovery platform is designed just for you to plop your data in and produce it out with base numbers. Lexby is an eDiscovery platform that offers a lot of case management tools. So that's what I would like to spend time on today. And I better hurry up because we are getting halfway through already. Everyone knows that you're going to produce out. Well, maybe not. There are definitely clients who start out with us reviewing someone else's production. We have a wide variety of users that come to us to host data. Some come and know that it's going to be a very quick process, and some begin a case, and as some cases do, they develop and build over years. So the production step is that delivery of the ESI to another party, to someone else involved in the case, in the appropriate format and using the appropriate delivery mechanism. So that is, all of these are very standard no matter what platform you're in, but I'm obviously giving you a little bit more context when using Lexbe. And finally, the presentation phase. You're displaying that ESI now before audiences. You've already produced it. Now you are using that produced or withheld ESI in a way to present it at a deposition hearing or trial. And you need to understand if you're using the native or near native format. And you're doing all of this to elicit further information, validating the existing facts or arguments that you are presenting. And you're doing so, why? To persuade the audience. So you need to just be aware of all the different phases. The presentation phase, I don't think a lot of us get to, but Lexbe can help you there as well. We have the ability to integrate from one of our briefcases, if any of you are familiar with the briefcase export, into the newest version of Trial Director. So you could theoretically go in and put up on the screen while you're logged into Lexbe, but if you want something more sophisticated, which I'm sure most of you do, know that you can export the data that you need out, that you're going to use as your trial exhibits into something like Trial Director. I say Trial Director because I know that one specifically, but it's a simple enough format that I think that if there are other trial presentation software out there, that it's something that we could easily look into if that's something you're interested in. So I'll just wrap up by reiterating, although I move from left to right, this process loops back and forth depending on a lot of different factors, new players, different data sources being discovered, etc. As I mentioned initially, this graphic is from Duke Law, and you can check out as well, in addition to the Duke Law website, you can check out ACEDS, and that is ACEDS.org. It's the Association of Certified eDiscovery Specialists. That is what all of my coworkers and myself are certified through. And another great resource is the SedonaConference.org. That's SEDONA, as SS and Sam, Sedona Conference. Those give a lot of really great scenarios and best practices, I think. And again, if any of you have questions about those resources, just chat me or send me an email. And great. Okay, so I will hop now into the Lexbe conversation, more Lexbe specific. Here's your Lexbe workflow, just generally. Planning and collection, I talked a lot about that just now with EDRM. I won't beat a dead horse on that, but I do want to make sure that if anyone has questions, I can send you the link to how to stream that webinar on data mapping. And when I say data mapping, if that sounds weird, it's really just an audit of what you're getting. Think of it as a chain of custody in a way. You're identifying what it is, where it's coming from, who's responsible for it. Is there any kind of litigation hold that would affect the normal course of business, like stopping like the auto archive? Just really understanding all of the nuts and bolts of what your client has access to and how they handle the data. The collection we talked about as well. Once it's in, you're culling it. You need to most likely cull down that data universe. You want to use search terms or custodian identification or date ranges to hone in on what is relevant, because there's a lot of data to review most of the time in these cases, and there's never enough time to do that review. So you need to help yourself by clearing aside that non-relevant data. Sometimes you may leave it in the platform, and just because you want to know it's accessible, if something comes up and all of a sudden that is now relevant, sometimes you may have the luxury of just knowing you can delete it and get it out of the platform. So once that, I think my workflow is backwards. So really processing comes before calling, and then you're reviewing. We'll talk about how to apply coding for anyone. If there are questions about review, definitely chat me. Otherwise, I'm just going to kind of go quickly through the coding steps. There's just one or two things I want to make sure that everyone is aware of. And then production. So production, for anyone who's not familiar with what it looks like after the fact, I'll show you a standard eDiscovery production. So number one, you know what it looks like what you're going to produce. And two, so that when you're getting these eDiscovery productions from opposing counsel, you know if they are giving it to you in the way that you've agreed upon before you even send it off to me. And you may not be interested in even taking a peek and looking, but I want to make sure that if you are, that you know what you're looking for. And then that depo and motion prep. That will, what I'll discuss heavily there is how you can export documents out in briefcases and what different types of modifications you can do in the platform before that, so that might help you in that prep for motions and depos. Let me go back to processing real quick. Let's just make sure that everyone understands what I mean when I say processing. It's the time that the data that you have uploaded takes to basically provide you with all the different tabs that you'll see once you open the document. So LexB processes a document, and every single file that's uploaded has not only the native version available to you, it will give you the extracted native text on that HTML tab. It will give you a normalized PDF. So that's what you need so that you can produce it. You want to bait stamp something. Sometimes you need to redact something, so you need that image. And then we extract on top of that the OCR text from the image. So those steps are part of the processing. Then we build a search index based on all of that extracted text. And finally, that index is updated and built so that you can run searches on it. So that's the processing time. So you may think that something is just a handful of files, but if those handful of files are thousands of pages long, that's going to take a little bit longer. So there's more to it behind the scenes, and sometimes that may take a few more hours, sometimes a day. So just know that when you upload something, there are many more steps that will happen before it's ready for you to review. So what we'll start talking about with the processing and the upload, what a load file is. What do people mean when they talk about that? Standard metadata fields, our TIFF versus our PDF. I think I kind of got ahead of myself and I talked about the processing, so I won't go back and talk about that or indexing. But then once we do an upload or talk about our upload QC, we'll do a deduplication and near duplication comparison. And then DNIST, if anyone has questions about that, it's something that we do include in those ingestion forms. And I'm not sure if anyone really ever questions it or is interested in it. DNIST is the removal of files that have absolutely no substance. There's nothing to review in those files. If you've ever copied a thumb drive over to your desktop and you open that folder, there's something called a thumbs or .db. Those are things that are not going to have anything relevant or reviewable for you to produce. They're not attached to an email family. They don't contain any substance related to the ESI. So those files, the DNIST is the standard removal of known system files from the collected data. And if you are interested in that a little bit more, please again just chat me or send me an email. If it sounds if it concerns you that things are automatically deleted, I can refer you to the organization, and know that it is a completely agreed upon step in processing for eDiscovery in the eDiscovery industry. It is not something we automatically do for you, however. It's like after you do the upload, we'll ask you in that ingestion form, do you want us to run DNest? Do you want us to deduplicate, near dupe? So that's what DNest does. So let's talk first about load files. Load files are the mapping file that we need to upload all the different versions of the same document that is given to you in a production. So I think now might be a good time to just open a production so that we can look at it together. So here is what you should see whenever you receive a production. And here are the load files folder, or here's the load files folder. So you'll get an originals folder. Some call it native, some call it originals. You'll get a PDF folder or images. So there's a little bit of a difference we'll talk about next, the TIFF, T-I-F-F versus PDF production, and a text folder. So you want to see at least 4 folders. Concerning would be if there was no images or PDF folder. That's the base image. That's what you need. If there's not a text folder or an originals folder, we can work around it. You simply won't have the benefit of opening an original version of something, but sometimes opposing counsel like to withhold the originals. Good tip to understand about productions in Lexby: you will automatically produce with your productions all originals except for emails. Emails are not, it is not standard to provide native emails, and that is an industry standard. Almost all platforms will require that you take an additional step or make an additional request if you want to include native emails. And you can, it's just like in Lexby, you just have to take an additional step to include those. But these load files will give us many things that we need. So in this originals folder, there are documents named by their base. So test 1, for example, is mirrored in the text folder as well, and the PDF folder. There's test 1. We don't want 3 versions of test 1 being thrown up into the platform. It's the same document. It's just the different versions of the document, or the file, I should say, not document. So the mapping file, or what is called an OPT, this file right here, is what allows us to upload these so that they're unitized. The DAT file is the other very important file. That is what holds all of the metadata that is provided for those documents. So for those 5 documents that were produced in my little test production here, I have a metadata, or I have a DAT file containing metadata about those 5 files. So you don't get metadata with a production unless you're given a DAT file. So I know a lot of my users struggle with that conversation with opposing counsel, because sometimes they just give you the PDF, and that's great. You can search on them, but you don't have any, you can't filter. You don't know when it was created. You don't have a master date. It requires a lot of manual work on your part in going through the review process and then manually populating date fields. And you shouldn't have to do that. The burden shouldn't be on you. It should be on the producing party. At one point, they had the original version of that email. So they had the original metadata. So if it's run through a standard eDiscovery platform, it's there. They're just not giving it to you. So that is something that we want you to make sure that you're armed with the knowledge ahead of time. One thing I'll mention too today is our new ESI sample, ESI order sample. We have modified it greatly. I think it will be very helpful. And I know that Jean Albert was scheduled to host a webinar yesterday, and they were having some issues with launching it. So I'm not sure exactly when it will be airing, but I think it should be in the next few days. And that, again, will be available to you to stream anytime you want to go watch that on demand. TIFF versus PDF. It's the same type of file. It's the baked version. A TIFF is a file that is so if it's a 5-page document, if you have a TIFF production, you'll have 5 different TIFF files representing that one document. If it's a PDF production, the PDF is unitized so that it's 5 pages in one file. So you'll only get one PDF for that 5-page document versus 5 different TIFFs for the 5-page document. TIFF is larger in gigabytes. If you don't need to produce in a TIFF production, make sure that you are aware of that, because it is going to be more cost effective for you to run PDF productions. They provide the same ability to search. They provide the same ability to redact and base brand. It's just some platforms automatically do TIFF productions. Lexi's a little more flexible, I think, because we are a little bit newer and more tech savvy, and we are geared to DIY users. So we're just more sensitive to gigabyte hosting. So in those ESI orders, if you can kind of address that from the beginning, that you just want to do a standard PDF production, then that will save you a little bit in gigabytes. Lastly, and I'm jumping around on this slide, but let's talk about dedupe and near dupe. Deduplication is metadata specific. So it is so specific that if a document or if an email, for example, is forwarded on after I receive it, if I receive it and then forward it on to my manager, Philip, that is not the exact same email any longer. Even if I didn't add any text to the body of the email, it now has new metadata. The date sent has changed and the to from has changed. If Philip and I received the same email from our boss, Mr. Weber, and neither one of us did anything with it, and then we are custodians whose PS or email accounts are being collected, and one of those emails that has never been changed sits in my inbox, and that same email that Jean forwarded to both Philip and myself in the same chain sits in Philip's inbox, those are now exact duplicates. If you run deduplication, you will be asked this question: do you want to dedupe horizontally or vertically? Horizontally means across the case, ignoring the fact that I'm a custodian and Philip is a custodian. So if my data got uploaded first, my version of that email is the prime. Philip's email account is uploaded next. Same email, same metadata, but the platform, the Lexi platform, will say, oh, well, the prime is already in here, so Philip's version is a duplicate. So now you don't have to review that email twice, because the one in Philip's PST is considered a duplicate. But you might need to know, you might want to do a vertical deduplication. So it would only identify duplicates within my email account, and then the next time that there is data uploaded, you run deduplication again, it will identify only duplicates within Philip's email account. So vertical means per custodian, and horizontal means just globally across the case, ignoring that custodian assignment. But just know that it's very, very specific. So a lot of you probably run into the issue where you feel like it is the same document. It looks exactly the same, but maybe the metadata is different. So what would you use then to identify those very like documents? That's where near duplication is your friend. So we can run near dupe for you, and I'll show you once we get in the platform what it looks like. And we can talk about a few different options that we have sort of started developing for clients that may be a little bit new since my last webinar. We've had some requests for, well, can't you set up a filter like the dedupe filter, like exclude duplicates? So near duplication, we have come up with a way to, it's not an exact filter. It's just, it would be the most recent document in a near dupe group, but we can talk about that too. And we've talked about denesting. So let's move on to the platform. So we're going to start in my demo case, and we're going to start with an upload that I've already done. I will say this, for the self-uploaders, know if you want to assign a custodian. Did this come from someone's email account? That's who a custodian would be, the owner of that data. It's not the attorney who got it from a client, it's the source. Where did this come from? Did it come from Angela's laptop and Angela's cell phone and Angela's email account? Angela is the custodian. So you set up the custodians under the analysis tab. Very simple. I'm not going to go through the steps, but you just start a new custodian, add the name, know that the name of the custodian is all that goes into the metadata that's provided in that DAT file that we were talking about in those load files. You don't have to populate all those other windows unless you want to. Also know the time zone offset. Time zone offset only applies when you're dealing with emails. If we ask you for time zone offset on a random upload, you can give it to us, but don't worry, it doesn't matter if it's not email specific. But we will happily still assign it just to be, overly detail oriented. The time zone offset will change if it's not set, it's going to universal. So it will just be at Greenwich Mean Time as you're looking at an email. If you have us assign a time zone for Pacific, for example, it will set the time to reflect what time in Pacific that email was sent or received. So uploading would be clicking on, I think I went a little bit too fast there, case, add case document, this window, and then upload. This window is now where you start to input that custodian and TZO. You can change the name of the upload batch. You can add a comment to yourself. Doc source is another thing that you can change. That's just a little filter later on for you. If you want to call it, a certain organization that's not the custodian assignment, or if it's responsive to certain requests or stipulations or initial disclosures, like there's just an additional little layer of organization you want to put on it. That's what doc source is for. You would choose your custodian from this drop-down list, which is why you need to make sure that you have already populated it, and then set your time zone. And you can see here, it will default to universal. If you have senders and receivers across time zones, I will say stick with universal, because unless you really just want to choose one versus the other, the industry standard would be to just stick with universal if you have people sending from various time zones. You will then click on next, and now it's a drag and drop situation. So if you have just regular data, different folders, different files you've collected, zip whatever it is into one zip file, drag that zip file over and plop it right here on this screen. If it's a PST file, PST is a container like a zip. It contains emails. You can drag that over and drop that PST. Once processing has completed and you have checked for fail to convert placeholders, delete that container. If it's a zip file or something that's attached to an email, don't delete that. If it's your upload zip folder, delete it later, because that could be adding gigabytes to your data hosting and you don't need that. And it's not something that you're going to produce. You're not producing that zip. You're producing potentially the documents within it. So just get it out of there once processing and your QC steps are complete. So again, drag and drop a zip file or a PST file, and then delete that later. And how would you delete that later? You would filter on .zip in your upload and name it something that it makes sense to you. Angela's upload zip or LexB zip. So that's the one you can identify that you want to delete. You don't want to inadvertently delete a zip file that was attached to one of your important emails. And a PST, there is probably very little likelihood, I would say almost none, that any of your client's data has PSTs attached. They give you that PST for you to collect and upload. So you can almost always know for certain. You filter on your upload batch, filter on PST, and then delete that. The next thing I'm going to talk about on upload is filtering for your failed to convert. want to talk about what a placeholder means so that you know what it is ahead of time before you release your data to the reviewers, or if you yourself are doing the review, because it's better to deal with it out of the gate. Is it something that needs to be addressed? Is it a corrupt file? Is it a password protected file? Do I need Lexby to help me? You want to do it sooner than later so that you're not forced to deal with those issues when you're in the middle of reviewing, or even worse, when you're about to produce something. So where we are right now, where I started, is this upload batch page. And again, add case documents, and this is where we are. These are all of the different times I have uploaded into my demo case. So let's go to this one and talk about, how do I QC? What does that mean? Quality assurance check. I want to make sure that everything is good and you're not, there aren't any data dependent issues out there that you're not aware of. I dragged over a zip file when I did this upload that was called data02. And down here is my data02 zip. So that's what I uploaded, this guy right here. How do I first start my QC? Well, first I want to make sure that I have all the files I need. So I'm checking the properties. There were 330 files in that folder. My doc count now is 405. Why? I had some emails in there and they had attachments, and an email with 5 attachments turns into 6 documents in Lexby. They're linked on our related tab because they're an email family, but they expand out. So I need to make sure when I do my upload, I have the same or more file count. So I'm good to go on that. The next step is finding the placeholders. And there are 2 types. And I'll be quick, guys, because I know there's some good stuff that we want to get to. Failed to convert. This is a file type that should, if there was no data corruption, give you a PDF image and not a placeholder. What does it look like? Let's look at a placeholder. And I noticed that this was an Excel. I have the metadata, the field exposed for field extension. This was an Excel file. Excels are notorious. In fact, I think we are kind of starting to accept the common practice in eDiscovery that they are so problematic. It holds up processing time. It is well accepted that you just produce the native version of an Excel file. And so the placeholders that we get on Excels are really not anything that we're going to raise a red flag for. By all means, if you have even just one and you want it to be converted to a PDF, we can merge that in for you. We can, we don't have to delete it and start over. We could take a PDF that you've created, or you can ask us to create, and merge it right in. But otherwise, it looks like this. It says placeholder. It gives you the file size. It gives you the name of the file and the original file path. You'll just see here what it's related to and where it came from. This HTML tab I mentioned before, this is the extracted native text. So even though you got a placeholder on an Excel, you still can review this in Lexby. So that HTML tab, right where I am right here, is great for handling and reviewing those Excels. Because the other alternative, if you didn't have this tab available to you, would be to go to this original tab and download the Excel and open it in the Excel program itself. And that's kind of laborious. So you have the ability to avoid that step and just review right here. But back to our QC. I have one placeholder in an upload batch of 405. That's great. Your threshold that you don't want to go over is 10%. So I have way less than 40 placeholders. So we're good. We're good with that. I know I've only got one, no big deal. Or if it was a big deal, I deal with it now. The other type is an unsupported file. These are files that are not, and look, I'm just switching the check from failed to support to unsupported. This is a file that's never going to give you an image. It's a voicemail, or it's a movie. It's, some other type of, it's a DAW file, something that's not going to automatically process. you're probably not going to have a bunch of DAT files in your data. I just have some in my demo stuff. But say this was a voicemail message. I now know I have a handful of audio files in this upload batch. I need to let my reviewers know you're going to have to listen to some of the files, like look out for these and be prepared to listen and take notes, or request that Lexby do an auto transcription of those. You can say, hey, in my latest upload, I have, 50 different audio files. Can you run auto transcribe? We can. It is definitely 100% dependent on the quality of the audio and how many speakers there are. If you have a recording of a docket call hearing, you're not going to get the best transcription. If you have a voicemail message with just me leaving you a voicemail, it's going to probably be 100% accurate. So we have the ability to do that for you. It's not something that goes in your production, but it's there for you just to make your review quicker. And you just want to know if you have some of these file types so that when you go into review, you're prepared. So that is my my QC conversation. And I want to move next to, once you upload, what's the next step? So for me, and I think for most of us, the common workflow is, okay, how am I going to identify what's relevant? Well, so that would be a series of searching and filtering and setting up a review set so that your reviewers can review, and using our custom tagging. And then we also have a really great facts and issues, our timelining feature, which we can talk about, as well as a new feature, or newer. We've really revamped our email threading tool. Email threading and near duplication, the near dupe groups, are two big ways that you can batch code groups that are like, or you can code one in the group because you only want to produce the most recent or robust version of that email thread, or that near duplicative document chain or document family, and then not produce the rest. So running searches in Lexby is as easy as navigating to the search tab and using one of the different search options. We have 4 natural language options, all of any of the exact phrase or Boolean, and you can run any type of Boolean search that you can run through DT search engines, and that is what is used by LexisNexis and Westlaw. So any of those Booleans that you're used to, you can run here in Lexby. I'll pop over here to make sure that everyone knows where to find a help page. You hover over the name of your case and you click on help, and let's look at the very few differences between what another type of search you have run in something like LexisNexis and how you'll run it in Lexby. And I like to share this one because this one has a lot of great links to how-to videos. So know that you have not only these tech notes on our help page, but you have, and they're great, very detailed, lots of graphics. I honestly am a proponent of the tech notes and the how-to videos more so than the manual itself, just because it's so easy to pick and choose. It's very on demand. You don't have to find it in the manual. Going down to the bottom here, you can see all of the great info it's giving you. It's explaining everything that I'm going through right now, and it's giving you a few examples of search strings you can formulate, and these are very basic. Know that you don't have any limitations. I think you can search on up to 1,000 characters, and you can use connectors, proximity searches, limiters, like anything that you're used to. I can't stress enough that you have the ability to do that here. Our difference is our wildcard is an asterisk, see here, instead of an exclamation mark. And that's pretty much the only difference. I think maybe the other would be a proximity search. So look up at this table, Apple within 5 of pear. That is within 5 words. So that might look slightly different. We do the with/5 instead of, I can't think of the other way to do it right now, but that might be the only other difference. So that's some good info about the search options you have. Let's run a quick search and talk about running a filter on top of your search. Maybe you're only searching on date ranges. So you could create a filter for yourself, run a search, apply the filter, and then you know you're searching within a custodian, in a date range, and excluding duplicates. So first, I'm going to set up some filters and create a quick link. If I'm going too fast, please let me know, everyone. I don't think that we'll wrap up right at 11. If anyone needs to hop off at 11 because you have, I'm sure, 1,000 other things to do today, please don't hesitate to let me know, and we can get you a copy of this that you can watch on demand. So I said I'm going to set up a filter quick link. And these are some little tips and tricks that we don't necessarily go over in all of your initial trainings. So I may be jumping around or maybe moving fast for anyone who hasn't had an initial training, but know that if you are brand new to Lexby, you will get time to go through all the basic things and ask me questions, you know, on a one-on-one screen share. So don't be concerned if I'm moving too fast. So my example was, I want to run searches. In fact, we'll even go so far as to say we've got 100 search terms. I'll show you a really great search template that you can use. I'm happy to send this Excel template to anyone who's interested. And this is how you can kind of plow through a big search project. So first, we're going to set up a filter. I know that I, in my ESI order, have been told there is a specific list for Ken Lay. From Ken's account, we are doing a specific date range. Could be different from a different custodian, could be a different set of terms. I've had that happen as well. So I've got Ken Lay, I've got my date range, and I'm also being required to exclude duplicates. When you apply filters, you'll see a yellow banner that will show you the filters that you have applied. Right here. So filters applied, master date, exclude dupes, custodian. I want to save this. I don't want to have to open that window and do that every time I run a search. Because remember, I'm searching on specific terms, and then I need to narrow it down to just this. And I'm going to tag those because I'm going to go get everything in processed. I'm going to run my searches and run my filters. I'm going to tag these documents, and I'll show you how we'll do our custom tags. And then that becomes my review universe. All the docs that I've tagged for Ken Lay search hit, blah, 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 goes in maybe a Ken Lay review set. And you can, do the same method with a different custodian. You could also just glob it all together into one master review set and let all your reviewers access it. That's really how Lexby intends for you to do your review, to really streamline, because we'll talk about the review set being something that everyone can access, and no one will ever access the same document as that another user has opened and reviewed. So I have my filter on now, and I'm going to create a quick link. So over here on the left menu, you can see some that I already have here. In fact, I've done this one before. So we'll just leave this, but I'll show you how I would create a new one. I selected edit. You can see all the ones that have been created already. So then I would take the very top of the recent list here. And this is where I would name it. And so again, I've already done one. I'll just phrase it a little bit differently. Ken Lay plus, date range. Plus exclude dupes. However you want to phrase it, it's totally up to you. This will share it. This little push pin would mean only I can see it. And then if I wanted to delete something, I can use the X up there. And now it populates under my shared quick links. And I'm over here back on my search. I'm going to run a search, and then I'll show you if I wanted to use the search template, how that would look as well. just for everyone's scheduling purposes, I think I'll probably go to about 11:15. And yes, absolutely, for that user that just requested a link, we can do that, because I understand that everyone has stuff to do on a Friday afternoon. So I'm going to run a search. I want an exact phrase here, because I don't want a document that maybe has the word paper and then on another page has the word white. I want white paper. I'm looking for all the white papers submitted by Kenley, which you probably didn't write any, but that's what we're doing here. So now I have 70. I need to apply this quick link because were any of these from Kenley, the custodian, during this date range? Because if they're not, I'm not tagging them, because that's not the parameters in my ESI request. I only have 12. Reviewing 12 versus 70 is excellent. So I would then select all and tag these. What does that mean? I'm batch coding them. I'm applying an electronic tag that I can filter on later. These are positive hits on this search and this filter. There are two ways to tag documents. I think now that we have this tagging on the fly ability, I feel like a lot of users probably do that more than going the old way, which is setting them all up ahead of time, but I'll show you both options. So this option would be tagging on the fly. So I would select all and go to this step, multi-doc edit, and I haven't created a tag yet. So that's what I mean by tagging on the fly. I haven't done white paper Kenley only, or whatever you want to call it. So I'm going to ignore all these that I've already created, right? I'm going to go down to add new field. Maybe this is a whole new section. I could create a new section as well. And when I say section, I mean category. The category is witnesses. The custom tag is Angela Cardinelli, if you're like identifying docs that you're going to use at my deposition. So the new section could be search hits, Kenley, and then even your date range, if you want to get that super specific. And here is white paper, and you are not able to duplicate the same term. So if you have white paper someplace else, do white paper KL or Kenley, or maybe you're only searching white paper under Kenley. Maybe you want to do all the search hits in one and know that you just will filter and tag only the ones for the particular custodians. There's a lot of different ways to approach it. I will then tag again, affirmatively tagging these docs to the white paper for Kenley tag. I don't want to expand to the family members here because we're only tagging documents that are search hits. When you create a review set, you will pull in all those family members. The review set is designed to deal with the families. And in fact, all of Lexby is designed to handle complete families. You cannot break up the family in Lexby. I update those documents, and now those are tagged. I would move on to my next search. So let's talk about using this search template. If you had a ton of searches and you don't want to manually enter them as I just did, mouse just stopped working, sorry. This search template will open and you'll see it's empty, but once we start populating terms in in column A, we can click on the term, or we can tab over, and a hash mark will populate. We have embedded an Excel formula essentially that tells the platform to run a search on that term and opens up the search hits or opens up a new tab and you have the search hits right in front of you. So just imagine if you had a ton of terms, that would be pretty helpful. And because it's an Excel file, you could kind of turn it into your hits list. You could memorialize how many hits per term. You could break it down by custodian. Excel is being very slow right now, so I am not going to take up, oh, here we go, of course, okay. So if I put white paper in here, and you can put a Boolean search term in here, just make sure it is exactly how you would phrase it. All of your parentheses or what have you are in the right place as if you were entering it in a search window. But putting it in just as it would be properly phrased will work the same from this Excel sheet. If you click on this link, it will take me one time. It will prompt me only once. It won't prompt you more than one time to that same 70. And so then from here, I would apply that quick link that I set up, and it's going to get me back to my 12, and I would tag my documents. And again, I think a lot of people maybe are doing the tagging, creating the tag on the fly, just because it's just as convenient. But if you weren't going to do that, if you wanted to get them all set up ahead of time, those tags, that is, I'll show you how you can do that from the Manage Custom Doc Fields page. I'm going to move on from searching. There are not a lot of other options or issues to deal with here. You can show different fields from this page. It behaves very similarly to the Browse page, but just the important things to know are you can filter on your search hits. You can tag from the search hits list. The last thing I'll show you is if you open a search hit, I know this may be a little more basic than we need to go, but I just want to make sure everyone is aware that you can also see the hits tab that will give you some context about the text around that term. Because even though it contains the term, maybe it's not the one you're looking for. And you can just automatically determine that this one is not relevant. So on this hits tab, you could see, oh, it does say white paper, but this one was all about a completely different regulatory publication. This isn't it. I don't need this one. What would you do from this point? Well, by just seeing the fact that here you can tell every page of this document is not relevant, you could move over to this Disc tab. So this is where you're going to code things once you're in a review set, or just when you're poking around, and you can identify right away this is relevant, non-responsive, etc. I would say this one is non-responsive. Once you change coding on a document, so see, not specified was what was populated because it hadn't been coded yet. It automatically checked document reviewed by me. When you're doing coding like this in the built-in Lexbe coding section, that will change every time you move it from not specified to something else. That's great because that gives you the ability to filter back on things later. If you are using custom coding, and when I mean custom coding, like anything that you create, like we did our search term for white paper, that doesn't happen. So if you are, for example, reviewing opposing counsel's production, you're not going to use responsive, custom designation, attorney-client priv. You are going to probably use issue codes. So that's your custom stuff. Take an extra step and check this box when you're checking something down here in your custom section. Why? So that you can use multiple methods. There's a couple of different ways to show yourself what's already been coded out of that production from opposing counsel. So you could set up a quick filter like I just did before. The, ABC production 1 and not reviewed by me. So the number goes down. So that's just something that you want to be able to do to audit the fact that it's a quick way to filter on what's been reviewed so that you can see what the balance is. So just word to the wise, it doesn't automatically populate if you're using this custom stuff. And then once you apply whatever coding you need to, you hit save. I was throw that in there. Make sure you're saving all your stuff. Otherwise, it's not going to populate when you filter on responsive or non-responsive or reviewed by me. So that's, I think, everything that we need to cover right now about searching, and happy to send that Excel log on to anyone who's interested. If your hits tab is not highlighted, that means you're not looking at a search hit. It's not a permission issue. The only time you'll see the highlight on the hits tab is if it's here because you've run a search, right? So that's the only time you're going to see that. That's also the only time you're going to see highlighted terms unless you use our case keywords. That's actually a good thing to talk about that I don't think it's talked about a lot. I wasn't planning on covering it, but I think it's quick and easy. We can do that. What are case keywords? Well, if you go over to the case tab and case keywords, and you want to be able to see, no matter, it's not a search hit like we just did, just in a review set, in anything, if anywhere anyone opens a document, and I use the priv example as a good one. If you have email domains for multiple different law firms, and you need to be able to have it in your face, highlighted. So this is our persistent highlighting tool. No matter where you are accessing a document from, when at lexby.com shows up, you can add that here. So you can edit your case keywords. So again, anywhere from browse in a review set, anywhere, not on a search list, Enron at enron.com will be highlighted on the document from the text tab. Once you do that, make sure you index case keywords. See, it will say indexing can take several minutes, etc. Last updated on this date, and then index it. So that means it's going to run that new term through everything and make sure that all the docs are updated, that are highlighted where they should be. And you'll always get that little out of date warning. I'm not going to do that right now just because it will run a little processing. And I'm not sure if we want to do a redaction or what we're going to do next. So once you have, let's talk about if you know that you want to set your custom fields up, and then a little bit about playing with the fields and how it can work for you in a slightly different way than what the standard, it's pretty self-explanatory, set up a tag. But how do you move these around? Maybe you're done with the priv log coding, but now you need to get back up to issue codes, and your reviewers are saying, could you please pull it to the top of the list? I don't like having to scroll all the way down. Just go to this Manage Custom Doc Fields page, pull your section up where you want it to be, take down anything that you don't need anymore, plop it wherever it needs to go. These expand and collapse if you get a ton like I have in here and you need to move things around. If you want to edit, edit. And it's as simple as that. So if you're just starting out, you need to add, it looks just like it did from that search list, the on the fly setup. Pick a section, create a new section, and just remember the section is the category, and the field is what your tag is. What would you have written on that sticky note if you were putting it on a hard copy? So the red well is the category. Here's all of the issue, the docs relevant to whatever the issue is, and here are all the little notes. So the field is a sticky note, and the category is the section. So the last thing I want to talk about when it comes to these custom codes are our suppression filters. We did a filter before. We set up a filter quick link, but let's talk about how you can use layering these filters to help you find the needles in the haystack. You can see here we've got not next to a couple of our options, but not all of the built-in ones have not. If you wanted to find the delta of everything that hasn't been coded or reviewed yet, that is another reason why you want to check that reviewed by me box if it doesn't auto-populate. Here you could say not reviewed by, and then click all the boxes for all your reviewers. Another way to get to that would be clicking on everything that says not specified, unless it's all issue codes. So if I still think that it's just a really good practice if you are dealing with opposing counsel productions or something that you're coding, but you're not coding for responsiveness. using that, populating that manually, that reviewed by me, gives you the ability to find everything that hasn't been coded at all. But then down here for the dynamic coding, every section has a suppression option. So maybe you want to see everything checked for the communication between defendants and plaintiffs, but nothing that you've produced already. So I always tell my paralegal counterparts to set up a custom section called productions. Every time you run a production, create a little tag for that production, filter on it, tag those docs, because there are times when you need to see everything that's not produced. Like this is a new project. It's a new calling method. Or maybe you're looking for anything from a certain production. So you want to use not the suppression filter, but checked for this. But you'll see that those custom tags can really help find very specific sets of documents. If someone says, I need to see everything that has been tagged for this particular witness, but nothing that was produced by us, I want to see only the hits that were produced by this third party and that are within the state range. Whatever the crazy criteria is that they can throw at you, these custom tags will help you. And if it's something that's not built in already, if it's like that we don't have a is produced or is not produced built-in tag, just create a little custom section for yourself and make that work. Okay, so I said I'd be done by 11:15, but I think it's really going to be more like 11:30. So we've talked about tagging, culling. Now you're going to put it in a review set. The review set's very simple. I just want to show you how you can set one up real quickly. So under the account tab, manage review sets. And the reason I want to show you is because I think that sometimes I've discovered that some of the users are skipping one last step, and then it's just not benefiting you as well as it should. So you'll create a new set. You just have to set it up first, like you're creating that empty folder. And now it says no docs in the review set yet. It's all empty. I'm sorting it by master date. Makes sense. Most people like to see it in date range order. Now I'm going to go find what I want. I've done the search and the culling process. I've determined what is relevant. You can decide if you want to get rid of everything that's not relevant or just leave it in there because you're going to filter it away anyway when you go in and find the relevant stuff. I will pull up my filters. I'm going to scroll down to, let's do keywords, right? So use some of these keywords. I'm just going to do a little small one. But you could be checking all of the boxes because you want to do a master review set with all of your search hits, which is my recommendation when you're setting up that post-culling review, your first pass. Let all of the reviewers access it. They'll never see the same document. It's like a library book, essentially. So my username logs into, because I log in with, we all log in with our specific usernames, log into the case. I access the review batch. I get to a document. It is now not available if everyone is using the review batch. It's not available to anybody else. So no one's going to overcode or code over me or waste their time reviewing something that someone else has already dealt with. You just add these to the set that you created, and this is the last step that I just wanted to make sure everyone is aware of. You have to go back and hit start. And why is that necessary? Because otherwise it's not visible to your other reviewers. It also pulls in the family members. So I only have 51 search hits, but there may be additional family members that need to get reviewed in this review set, right? So starting it will do both. It will pull the review sets in, it will pull the family members in, and it will now make it visible to your other reviewers. It didn't pull anybody anybody in here, but imagine it went up to 75. That's because there were 14 email attachments. You want to make sure you're always reviewing a full family. The review batch also puts it in date order and family order. So it's a nice, clean flow. And then the last thing will be tell your reviewers to go to the Discovery tab, review batch, and batch them out. Batching them out means just what I described before. It's like a library book. Whoever logs in first gets to the first email family. The next reviewer logs in. I mean, everyone can be in the review batch all at the same time. If you review today and you don't review again until a month from now, you will not start over. You'll go to the next available document. And now that you're in the batch, it looks just like the same coding panes. Everything same here is available to you. You can here as well add a new field on the fly. So there's actually 3 ways to set up a code: from the multi-doc edit, from the management page, and then when you're just literally in the document here. Some other things that you can do with documents are highlight and annotate them. You can make notes to each other or just yourself about the document, not marking it up, but just making notes to yourself. So it's really, we're trying to design this so you don't need to have any paper copies. You don't need to have multiple, workflows. You can do everything that you need to do within Lexi. So all of those options are over here. So under the Doc tab, maybe you want to annotate. You want to highlight or make notes on it. Maybe you need to do a redaction. That's where you would do your redaction. Maybe you would like to make notes. Click on New Note, and you'll see the windows that open up. You can give it a title. You can give it the actual note. So maybe you want to organize your notes by title, by issue. And then here's where you would add the note. Facts and issues is something that I definitely want to spend just 2 minutes on, just so that you can visualize what it is and how it will work for you. And then, again, that's our timelining feature. And then the related tab is where you would just simply see all of the relations to the document. But these 3 things are how you take it to the next level of case flow and data management. I'm going to show you what it looks like after you've done an annotation when you export things out in a briefcase, because you've now produced, you reviewed everything, you've run your production, you are ready to start managing the exhibits for the upcoming deposition of Ken Lay. So we could run a filter to Ken, date range, kind of seems like a good one. You would probably have more than just a white paper search hit, but for just demonstrating how to export these to a briefcase, you would select all, because now you know that this is what your attorney needs to take to the deposition. So you export you export these documents to a briefcase. And here are your options. If for you probably want to keep it on the original doc title or the base number, because if it's been produced, just identifying everything by the base number becomes sometimes the easiest way. It's probably what they refer to in their depot outline. So why not just keep it consistent? So I would say I would ignore everything else here other than doc title or base number if we're doing the depot prep example. If it's something you've produced, stamp existing base numbers on the page. Otherwise, it's a clean version, and we'll look next at what the downloaded briefcase looks like. If it's something that was produced to you, you don't need to do that because the image itself already has their original base branding. And then click on Send Notification upon completion. When it's ready, you will go to the case Download Briefcase page and just download. If you wanted to combine, this one over here has 302 files. I don't want to open every 302 PDF files and hit print. I would select it, merge, so I'm up here on PDF merge, create one big PDF, with 302 slip sheets. I guess it would really be 301 slip sheets. So insert the separator sheet. I hit print once. I print it on 3-hole punch paper. I insert number tabs where those blank separator sheets are, throw it in a binder, and it is ready for the hearing or the depo. If you have annotations, if attorneys like to mark up a copy, that's their working copy, that's what's going to be in their notebook, you've got it. It's just as easy. Let's look at a briefcase here. You're going to have your clean version, your merged version. I think it's my training example. Yeah. So here's your PDF. Oh, actually, I don't have them combined in one, but here would be my clean version. This has Bates numbers on it. But over here is my attorney's working copy. This is what I know needs to go under that exhibit tab, because this is going to have their notes to themselves. This is what they highlighted. They typed up a little note in the annotation editor, and that's what they want to look at. But then in here's my clean version. Here's what I'm going to print and collate and throw in the folder for them to present as an exhibit. Or we have redactions. If you have a redacted version, it's going to alert you to that, and you'll only go pull from the redacted folder. So the briefcase is great. It helps. So imagine you're not just doing this for a deposition, but a motion for summary judgment. You need to pull the attachments. You can print as many versions of this as you need. And if you had that example where you had so many files that you exported and you don't want to print them all at once, do what I just showed you up here, merge it, and now you have an additional folder. So here's just the one merged PDF, or here are the loose ones if you needed to just grab a couple extra copies of Exhibit 5. There you have it. So the briefcase is great, and the briefcase is what you see here is what you could also upload or import, I should say, into Trial Director if you were going to do this for a trial exhibit. The case notes, if you wanted to type in those little notes, not the annotation editor, but the notes, is nice because you can then go back and see so if all of the reviewers are making notes as they go along, or maybe not all of them are, but some of them are, and they want to see them all at once. Well, where are all the case notes? Under the Analysis tab and Case Notes, now you can see all the documents that have notes. So here is the title. Here's the note itself. If you just want to pop a little bubble out, you can hover on the clipboard. And if you want to open the document itself, then you can click on the hyperlink. You can export this log to Excel as well, so you can see a whole log of all the notes together, share it with other attorneys or other members of the review team. And lastly, facts and issues. I'm going to just pause for a second and pull up another demo that is tailored exactly to the facts and issues. So I just paused for one quick second while I move around in the platform to another case. And I like to show this. It's something that isn't exactly. We don't need to go through all the steps. I don't think. If you're interested in it, then you can play around with it. And once you have specific questions to how you want to set it up, or the how to link a document is very self-explanatory. Okay, so we should see my screen again. Let me know if you don't. Under the Analysis tab, under where you would set up a custodian, here is, and above Case Notes, here is Facts and Issues. This is a small sample, but I think gives a good, quick visual on on how you can lay out the timeline of the data of your ESI, where your data, your evidence, which is what it is strongest and weakest. You can see that you have a lot right here. The state range is well covered. This particular fact has a lot of evidence to back it up. Here, over here, these little blips, are you missing something? Do you need to look a little deeper? Is this the opposing counsel's evidence? And is this where you can attack the holes in their evidence and where their argument is the weakest? But you can just see that this will allow you to lay it out in a way that helps you visualize where your evidence is strong and weak. It also allows you to say, oh, this hearing is coming up, and we are arguing a stipulation. We're saying the taxes went unpaid. Opposing party is saying that that needs to be stricken. I need to pull all of the evidence that I have that show that that was not being done. Click on this. And this would work for a custom tag as well. But if you're using both, I would say definitely use both. Don't ever forego the tags. The custom tags are useful in so many different ways. You need them to help you get your data into review sets. You need them to help you get data into a production. This is another level, but it also gives you the ability to export everything. I'm pulling the exhibits for this motion and this hearing. Click on this, export to briefcase. So now you have all of those documents. And again, this is pretty simple to set up, so I won't spend a lot of time on it today. If you have questions about it, we have a how-to video. It's very simple. Create a new issue. The issue needs to be set up first. Those are the broader, for lack of a better description, issues in your case. And you can see them over here on the left: bankruptcy, financial, fraud, liability. You can also set it up, and I've seen this done, to mimic the counts of the complaint. So if you want to associate documents with each count or allegation, you can do the same thing. You would set up the issue, and then under that, you associate a fact to it. So if I went to fraud, I only have 2 facts that I am proving or disproving right now with my evidence, but you just build this out. You can export all of this to an Excel log as well. It can be a table of contents for a hearing finder. It can just be something to help you visualize and work with outside the platform, but is a great tool that is not one of the ones that we get to cover a lot in initial trainings, and is not one of those things that we that everyone uses when they come into LexB. It's, really, you may be used to a platform that is really just for reviewing and producing. And the last 2 things that I said I wanted to show, one is very new in the way that we've modified it: near dupe and email threading. So we talked in the beginning about deduplication, and we also talked about culling, where part of that whole culling stage really could also be before you throw things in a review set. If it's a more complicated set of data, it may not be as simple as, here are my search terms, here's a review set review. Maybe you've got a ton of duplication and it's not an exact dupe, so that filter exclude dupes doesn't help. We can run near dupe for you. For all of our subscription clients, all of these are free services. For a Flex client, I can't even remember. It may be free for Flex as well. It's a processing step, really. I mean, we do a tiny bit of work on the back end to just train you on it, to show you how to use it, but it's a processing step, and we would never charge you the time to process. So it's not like something that professional services is going to bill you for. But you give us the request, we run it, we let you know that it's ready, we send you an email with lots of beautiful screenshots of, like, this is how you can use it, here's a link to the tech note, and then you may have additional questions. So where would you find them? If we're talking about near dupe, you would go to the groups page and you would click on near dupe groups. And now you'll see you have 226 groups. I want to see the first group. I see 12 in here. And this is the very manual way, but if you don't have a ton of groups, this is kind of sometimes, I think, the most straightforward. I see the titles. I would expose new fields for myself. I would show myself date, master date, to, from, everything that's going to clue me in on which is the one that I can omit which is the one that I can, include, or are they all so similar? It's a PDF version of an MSG. I'm just going to code them all. They're all responsive. I'm going to open this first one up, review it. I get it. I see that they're all so similar. It's like this just got forwarded on, or it's just the same, like version 2. Code them from here and move on to the next group. So there's a way to batch code. We can also create a report for you, an Excel report. So if you prefer to look at something in a report and then just click into the hyperlinks from our report to open a document to look at it that way, you don't want to look at this, you can use that. And lastly, we can create a filter for you that would say, for group 12, this is the most recent one up here. That may be the only one that you want to look at when you say run a search on white paper, and then use the filter I've created called near dupe representative. And it's going to be that top level, most recent within a group. So for all 226 groups, there's one rep, plus any document that doesn't fall into a near dupe group. So that gives you a way to kind of filter down on and exclude a lot of the redundant documents. I'm going to pause this for one last second and take you into an email threading example, and then I'll check for more questions, and then I will free everyone on this beautiful Friday afternoon. I hope that I've covered some good topics for everyone today. You're always welcome to give feedback. On what was helpful, what wasn't, what you'd like to see more of next time. Okay, so now I'm back in my demo case. And similar to where near dupes was, I've run email threading in my demo case. So there's a couple different things you can do with email threads. If you know that you have redundant threads, there's a filter built in now where you can, under exclude duplicates, exclude redundant emails. That means that they are redundant emails from a thread group. Another thing that you can do is to visualize showing yourself in a thread different emails in bubbles that will give you the metadata to the right. You can compare and contrast. It really helps if you get in 70 PSTs from a huge corporation and tons of duplicative emails because everyone is emailing each other back and forth. Sometimes it branches off because I take something that got forwarded to me by our CFO and I take it off in another thread and communicate with my manager about it. And then he forwards it on to someone else. Like all of those different branches of the thread, you want to see them and kind of pick and choose the ones that you're going to look at. And that's something that's hard to do with any of those other processes that we've discussed on how to present yourself the most lean and mean review universe that you can. So you can see here, kind of similar to those near dupe groups, here are the threads. So you would simply just click on a thread. And there's one last thing I want to show you, which I think is pretty cool. And then, like I said, I'll open it up for questions. So here's all the 28 in the thread. I've got the good field views here showing me what I want to see that might give me at a glance what I need to know. Or I can open a document up, and you can, and this, what I'm about to show you is available to you whether or not you've gone in through a thread group or you just go to browse and open up an email. You now have the ability, when you're looking at a document, to click on visualize. So visualize is going to give you, oops, sorry, that's way in and out. So you click on this. This one must only have like one other. If we had, let's see if I can get a better example here. use my handy little quick link here. Okay, so I've just opened up an email. If this one has a ton of other emails in the thread, it'll be a good example. And if it doesn't, that's okay. Okay, so this one is not part of the thread. You will have the ability to compare and visualize, meaning you can show those bubbles to yourself and pick and choose from, say, an example that would have, so many different on the thread. Do I want to review and compare and contrast 5 or I guess actually you can only select 2. These 2, do I want to show myself what is similar about the email message? And do I want to show myself what is different about the email message? So you have a lot of new options available to you. I'm trying not to take forever, so I'm kind of scooting through this. But if anyone's interested, please definitely reach out and let me know. So you can find it on the Related tab and visualize. And then there will be another step that will allow you to compare 2 emails. So again, email threading has been updated. And the last thing that I'll say is our ESI order has also been updated. And you can find it from some templates from the help page. And Jean, again, is doing a new state-of-the-art ESI protocol webinar. So if you scroll down to the bottom of this, you can click on a PDF or an editable doc format version of it. And it's very helpful if you want to get going on one of these before your scheduling conference or your 26F conference. And we have, it gives you an idea of what you want to ask for, of what you may be asked for, and just kind of what you need to be prepared for when you're going in so that you can get that order entered sooner than later. Thank you, everyone, for joining me today. For anyone that had to sign off, they will be sent a link if they would like to request it. And I invite you all to not only join us for our next installment of the Paralegal Advantage webinar, but also for our weekly webinars. And for those, you are invited to submit questions that you are encountering. If you have a production coming up and you want to ask some questions about preparing a production, or if you aren't sure what it means, the difference between PDF versus, TIFF, again, just submit those. And you can find that link on our lexi.com website as well. Have a great Friday and a happy holiday season, everyone. Thank you very much.